Hello everybody, Mentour Lawyer and
Ladybug.
So we got done watching the closing arguments, the state and the defense. State went first, then the defense, and then the rebuttal. And now the case is in the hands of the jurors. 3 alternates were released, including the one person that everybody had some concerns about because he was very expressive and seemed to be very pro-defense almost throughout the trial. But now the case is in the hands of the jurors. And before I tell you my thoughts about the closing arguments from both sides, I want to hear from Ladybug. So Ladybug, what were your thoughts? What was your impression of the closing arguments from the state?
I thought Georgia Kappelman was very factual and she went through everything. I don't think she left one thing out. And I believe she was right on the money for everything she said. I thought Daniel Rashbaum did a really great job as well. He was very emotional and he was gave a lot of movement and was asking the jurors, what would you do? What should you think? And he was very in touch with them versus just going over the story. And I think he did hit what he needed to say about filling in like the puzzle piece scenario. It was a bit much, but I do think he did a good job explaining what he did, what he started from his opening.
And I guess we can say that he has really good control of the courtroom when he's speaking. He did engage with the jurors. I agree with that. He looked them in the eyes, and there were moments where he was not saying anything. He was holding them accountable for their promise to hold his client or see his client as innocent until proven guilty. And then he just looked at each one of them into their eyes. He made a lot of eye contact with the jurors. Now, the case is in the hands of the jury. I'll tell you a little bit about my impressions of the closing arguments. I thought Georgia was very solid as expected. I thought that she did, of course, went through all of the facts, but I don't think that she really changed too much from what her original plan for closing argument was. I'm not sure that she really went hard enough, in my opinion, towards the defense theory. Maybe that's a strategy. We don't want to always have to chew everything out for the jurors. You kind of want and hope that she planted enough seeds of doubt in the jurors about Charlie's story. Because I think that, of course, the biggest weakness for Dan Rashbaum when he's doing the closing argument is that a lot of the defense's story doesn't make any sense. So I thought that she could have made a few stronger punches to this defense theory during the closing. So perhaps she could have done more, but it was overall effective. I think a good delivery, good performance, and it definitely held my attention throughout. The defense attorney did an excellent job. I think I agree with Ladybug's perception. He really did have a good control of the courtroom. The jurors were very, very attentive throughout his presentation, which also was pretty long. This was a very long, straight session of closing arguments with no breaks in between. And I think that the jurors really were very attentive throughout the period that we were inside. We were not inside there for the first part of Georgia's argument. We were watching from the media room. But after that, we went into the courtroom, and the jurors, in spite of the fact that they had no break, they seemed very attentive. Let me tell you some of the things that I kind of wish that Georgia had brought up during her rebuttal, especially. I'm going to tell you the list of things that I hope that the jurors will get to on their own. Remember, we don't have to always chew it out for them. And I know that Georgia actually did do a really good job in the cross-examination of Mr. Adelson, Charles Adelson, when he was on the stand. And a lot of the seeds that she planted in my mind, she didn't really address in the closing argument, but hopefully those seeds were planted in the jurors' minds, and maybe they'll bring it up. So, one of the things that came up during the testimony of Charles Adelson was the fact that his mom recorded a conversation with the supposed extorter during the second extortion, right? During the bump, the supposed second extortion. Yet, there's no recordings whatsoever of Katherine Magbanua doing this extortion. If Charles Adelson, a smart dentist, had been the victim of an extortion, don't you think that he would have found a way to at least develop some evidence? Because the biggest fear for him would be, if somebody finds out, if these people get caught, those people are going to say that I was involved. I need to have some proof to show I wasn't involved, I was a victim. Yet, that wasn't discussed at all in the closing arguments. I think I would have discussed that issue. Do you see? Do you think that should have been discussed, or?
I think so. I think when you're in a situation, you need proof to obviously prove your story. So I do agree with that.
Exactly.
I don't think you can be too scared to try and get evidence. People can have a phone and take the voice memos and try to record something. So I definitely agree with that.
I mean, we heard from Dan Markel. He had security cameras installed inside the home 2 days or 3 days or 2 weeks after this murder happened, which I think is because he realized, hey, wait a second, I'm doing this deal with this bad elements of Miami, and I want to make sure that I'm secure because they may have some ideas down the line. So anyway, or it could also be, by the way, and I hope that the jurors will also think that this was such a well-planned murder that all along they were also planting seeds of doubt, and that included making it look like everything was normal for them, making it look like Wendi wanted to stay in Tallahassee, and making it look like afterwards like they were being extorted. That could have been. That's something that the jurors may also think about. So the whole issue of no receipts, that's something that would be a theme that I would probably pound upon in the closing arguments. What else? The fact that there was no corroboration for Charlie's story. That the whole defense that they presented is dependent upon Charlie.
I didn't even think about that till just now, because they could have had Donna or Harvey come to the stand.
Yes. Friends, whoever. I mean, nobody. Obviously, he says that he was so scared that he didn't tell anybody, and then he later says, well, I'll tell Donna. So neither Donna nor Charlie think of, okay, let's create a record to show that this is an extortion, that we're not paying for a murder, right? Even the fact that they are now issuing checks from the clinic, from the Adelson Institute to the supposed extorter, okay, that doesn't prove that they were not part of the murder, or it doesn't prove that they were being extorted. It proves that, number one, I guess they never thought that they would be caught, right? Or that they wanted to have that little defense of, are we that dumb? Are we so dumb that we're gonna pay this Magbanua lady with our checks, and
unless
plan
they
to unless they
or
are.
There's the third possibility.
Yeah. But if you look at all the things that happened, I mean, that seems to be also a possibility, a pretty strong possibility that they were planting seeds of doubt for a potential day when they had to face the music. But the main point that I would have made is that there's no corroboration. It's just Charlie's word. And it is not just the fact that it's Charlie's word and nothing else, but it's also the when. She kind of did touch upon the fact that we found out in opening statements about this defense. But I would have gone a step further. Why would somebody wait so long to tell the story? And I guess it's because if you tell the story too early, if you go to the interrogation room and you tell a story before you look at all of the evidence, or if you get arrested and then you talk to your attorney and you give the story before you look at all of the evidence, the state may find a ton of evidence that they have, the wiretaps, the recordings, that contradicts what you're saying. By you waiting until the last possible moment You've had now the chance to review everything and shape your story to match the evidence and to match the narrative that you want to tell to get out of this.
I do think she did brush up a little bit on it, but she didn't go into detail.
Yeah, so I would have just at least said that. Said, why would somebody who's innocent, who's been a victim, wait so long to tell their story? Until the day of opening statement, the state wasn't even informed that there was a second crime. And you heard, so I will do this in rebuttal. You heard Mr. Rostrom admit the fact that his client has had the time to study the record inside out, knew every single wiretap, could tell us the date and how long the calls were, so on and so forth. Let me give you one example, I would say.
He was very specific in those.
Yes, let me give you one example. Does the 48 hours make any sense in this case? When Charlie was telling the sorry story about how he was the victim of the second crime on July 18, 2014, he threw in there this detail that when Katie arrived, and remember, later he says, Katie's the mastermind, she knew about this email where the Adelsons were willing to pay $1 million to Dan Markel so that Wendi could move to South Florida. And so Charlie tells Katie, hey, I actually going to pay 1/3 of that, and I have the cash to pay for it. So you would think, right, that if Katie's coming to him with a story, oh, my friends overheard me, and they decided to go ahead and do what you wanted, which was Dan Markel being exterminated so that Wendi could move, and now they want this money. First of all, why would they want only 1/3? That's the point that you could have made in the closings. But I think most important is why, when Katie first tells him about this, would she say, you have 48 hours, and if you don't pay, they're gonna kill one of your family members. Why throw in 48 hours? Why not say, hey, I'm better get this money tonight, and if I don't go there, if I don't have the money tomorrow morning, they're gonna do something. Why 48 hours? Is it because, like Georgia actually had said earlier during one of the cross-examinations, he was trying to put the toothpaste back into the tube? He later saw there is a phone call, a 2-minute phone call between him and his mom when he's trying to figure out whether or not this is law enforcement or he is a gangster that is trying to extort him, right? This potential extortion, which gets him really scared. So he says in there, he's saying, this is not an extortion. It's not like, I know how it's done. It's not 48 hours. So he's reviewing all of the evidence. He sees that phone call, and then he throws in the 48 hours because then he can say, oh, look, even later, there's this recording of me saying, I'm mentioning the first extortion. I mentioned how I know it's 48 hours. How convenient. So the 48 hours doesn't make sense in this story, in the first story. Why would Katie come with this threat of payment within 48 hours? Katie would think, if she's the mastermind, he's got all the money in the safe.
Right, the faster
Why would
the
she
better.
even think about 48 hours? She's right there. He doesn't have to go anywhere. He just has to go and open the safe. He just has to go open. He doesn't have to go cash the money in the bank. He doesn't need 48 hours.
That's a good point.
Yeah. I would have made that point, and I'm hoping that the jurors will think about that. So I covered most of the main points that I would have raised during the rebuttal. There's two more things, one more thing really, about the closing arguments that I would have done. And I think I would have mentioned in there somewhere, towards the end, maybe I would close with this. And I would say that the defense is basically trying to get, they're not trying to just help Charlie get away with the murder, but they're trying to help the entire family get away with the murder. And why is that? It's because they want to win this war once and for all against Dan Markel. For them, it's not enough that Charlie gets a not guilty. They also want to have a defense to their grandsons or nephews, to the sons of Dan Markel. They want to be able to tell those two kids who lost their father to a hitman that was paid by Charlie, that Charlie never meant for that to happen, that he was the victim of a crime, that somebody else was the bad guy in the story, and that the Adelsons were victims just as much as their dad. So I would have thrown something like that. I think it would be emotional, and I think it would bring the point across that this is total BS, and that they want a full win against Dan Markel. And then the last thing I wanted to say is this. I believe that the defense did everything possible in this case to maintain their element of surprise. They gave up Donna, Harvey, and Mr. Mintz as witnesses in this case because they didn't want the prosecutors to know what was coming. They wanted to catch the prosecutors, in a sense, with their pants down. You heard the opening statement. In the opening, the state just gave their normal opening that we all expected without any mention of any extortion or double extortion. The state basically had to prepare its counter moves, its proof that whatever Charlie was going to say was false in a very, very short time. In essence, the element of surprise was a huge advantage, I think, for the defense in this case. Now, here's what I think about that. I think that obviously the prosecutors realized that that they got played, right? That they got played, that they didn't do the interviews of Donna and Harvey when they could have, that they canceled the deposition of Mr. Mintz and instead should have gone through it because they would find out what defense was coming. And I think that if there is an acquittal in this case, if the element of surprise actually helped the defense and somehow Charlie gets an acquittal, I think that the state will know that they got played, and I think that the next thing that happens is that they charge Harvey, Donna, and potentially Wendi. I think that they're also going to go dig deep into all of the recordings, all of the wiretaps, because I think that the element of surprise could be an indication that there are things in there that with enough time to go through everything, they may have found additional evidence to contradict this defense theory. And so I think it's not the end of the story. I think that if there is an acquittal, it's not the end. Any final thoughts?
Thanks for watching.
Wait a second, what about any of the points I made? Do they resonate with you?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, they make sense for sure. I was actually going to ask you, because you're talking about them charging Harvey and Donnie if he gets the acquittal. But what if he does get the guilty verdict? Do you think they still will charge the rest of the family, or you think so? Regardless of,
I think that overall, I think that at a minimum, Donna, for sure. I think that overall, this whole play that the defense made probably has the state now more than ever more convinced that their theory that all four of them were involved is the correct one. And I think that they'll definitely go forward. And there's always also, as to Charlie, by the way, there's also the possibility that the federal government could also charge him with a murder for hire under the murder for hire statute. So even if he gets an acquittal, there's a chance that the feds will step in because the FBI was involved in this investigation very deeply. And they're not going to want to know, they're not going to want to see a guy get away with murder for hire. That's just awful for our justice system. And so I think that it's very possible that they will continue the case forward even if there is an acquittal. But let's hope that the jury gets it right. I think that the jury should vote guilty, and Ladybug's not going to take a position yet.
No, I think he's guilty. But these are also the people on the jury. They know nothing about the case. They don't get all the facts. They don't. I mean, they get all the facts, but I mean, they don't get any outside sources. They're just hearing what they're hearing in the courtroom for the first time ever. they're not hearing others' opinions, they're not using reaction. I mean, there are no reactions really in the courtroom, so they have nothing to judge by other than what they're thinking. So it's very different for everyone online versus being an actual juror. That's why I'm just trying to keep an open mind, but I do think that Adelson family is incredibly involved in, you know,
what happens
during the hit.
Yeah. Okay, everybody, thanks for watching Mentour Lawyer
And Ladybug.
All right, now let's get to edit, and we're gonna let you guys know as soon as there's any indication that a verdict is in, or if there is a jury question. Of course, it's gonna be on the live stream. We may also do a quick short live just to let you guys know, hey, a verdict is coming. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.